But this also requires, on Reformed Catholicity terms, that we rethink what we're doing in worship. In fact, it may require, as I think it would, that we privilege those features of a liturgy and worship service that are not unique to our situation, not new to our cultural moment, not distinctive to our own makeup, congregational background and history, and the like. Nor should they be distinctive to our denominational identity and so on. But when we're talking about where the privileging should happen in the church's worship, it would appear that those things which connect us to the church of every age and every place are the things which demand the greater visibility and the more regular participation in the worship of the church. In fact, there is an argument to be made that space ought to be created for connecting our own worshiping congregations with the practices and worship of churches remote from us culturally and historically, even if it means excluding out of that picture those practices, those forms and words of worship which are most at home for us in our immediate environment, precisely in order to strengthen in a visible way the truth of our Catholic identity. To be sure, this will not excite those who think very much of modern worship styles and innovations and uses of worship technology and so on, and creating of new forms and genres of worship music. And yet, it's difficult to come out of what we have learned from Reformed Catholicity without recognizing that an attachment to the words and the forms of the Church Catholic when the Church is at worship is far more than something like wishing for a better day, reaching back for a better time, and trying illegitimately to bring it into the present. Some mere wistful glance to something that used to be true in the church but isn't anymore, or even a bare assumption that what is older is better. None of these things need to be true. Instead, the church at worship is arguably the principal context in which her Catholicity should be most visibly on display. Where that is the case, Cyprian's assumption of how the church really grows would appear to be met with our own practices as well as our theological endeavors and the mode of them both, where we, through our being different and uniting ourselves to our brethren rather than to the world around us, makes us curious in a potentially saving and life-giving way to the pagans, the hurried, impatient pagans around us. To be sure, this is much more than opting for properly Catholic expressions of the faith in things sung and confessed and done in worship. It must find expression as well in the deeds of the church, where relieving others' burdens within the body of Christ rises in importance in the life of the church. Mutual forgiveness, humility in speech, visiting of the sick, protection of orphans, widows, and the vulnerable in general. In these ways, the culture which is Reformed Catholicity is filled out, and through it, the heavenly nature of the church advanced in ways that speak well of the gospel that the church proclaims and confesses as true for all people at all times, especially for those who themselves are wearied and heavy laden in the impatient and harried pagan world outside. At the end, then, of our studies in Reformed Catholicity, we arrive with something we hoped would be the case at the beginning. A vision for the church's theological endeavors and exegetical endeavors and churchly worship, which commends to the world the Christ of the gospel as the place and as the person of rest. Catholicity as creating the space for rest in a harried world. This ultimately may be the link between what is Reformed Catholicity and what is the gospel the Church proclaims. That by being one together in these various ways, we are unlike the world and therefore able to speak to that world words of hope and of invitation. May it be so as we continue in our own labors, theologically, liturgically, biblically, and relationally in the mode of Reformed Catholicity. Thank you.